green lamp is lit. I would like to call to order the regular meeting for the Economic Development Corporation for the City of White House, Texas. It's July 31st, 2024, and it is 12 p.m. Susan, would you please call the roll?
I will. Bob Breedlove. Charles Parker.
Here.
Ernie LaFleur.
Here.
John Chambers.
Here.
Maria Davenport.
Here.
Tom Trimble. And Jerry Akins. We have a quorum.
Awesome. Consent agenda, approval of boy. Let's see if we can get the verbiage going here. Approval of minutes from the EDC meeting on May 16, 2024.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Presentations. Do we have any presentations today?
No, sir.
Okay. It is 12:01. Let the record reflect that we have the arrival of Bob Breedlove and Jerry Akins are both in attendance at the meeting now.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public forum. Miles, did you come here to talk to us, or are you just here to visit? We appreciate that. We normally don't get much of an audience, so thank you. So I guess having none, we'll move on to item E, agenda items. Discussion, consideration, and action on a fiscal year 2024-2025 budget.
All right, so I've included at your place a copy of the proposed budget for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Just a few changes you'll note in there. On your revenue, we have increased the allocation that's expected to begin October 1st from 1/4 of 1% sales, from 1/8 to 1/4. So you'll see that additional revenue in there. The other changes include, we have provided for, I believe, 5 months of a full-time executive director for the Economic Development Corporation. So we estimate that City Center will be complete in May of 2025 and anticipate you guys being able to bring on a full-time director at that time when we have office space available. So that is reflected in here. So you'll see that change on line item 569101. The other things that are not included in here, I did speak with the council on Friday. We are working through what any lease agreement may look like with both the Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber of Commerce for use of that facility. I expect that the annual cost of that will be minimal. So that's not included in here as we continue to work through that. I'll keep you updated as we go. And then any other items that we have on your agenda for today are not reflected in this proposed budget.
Okay.
One other item to note that's budget related, I do have a meeting set up with Specialized Public Finance, who's the city's financial advisor, next week, I believe, to talk about the Economic Development Corporation's capacity to borrow should you find land to purchase for a future business park, what that structure may look like for you all. So they are working on that preliminary analysis for me now. I don't know that I'll have answers by next week, but we are working towards getting that information to you.
Okay.
when you're looking at this, your 2023-2024 total budget is there, your year-to-date activity. July was the first draft that the council kind of saw of this proposed budget. August is with all the changes that I mentioned. So that very far right column is the one that you need to be looking at. We're happy to answer any questions or entertain any suggestions, changes, updates you'd like to see.
What are the contractual services?
That includes the Blue Dot, which is our business CRM software, and our website development that we're currently working on with the East Texas Council of Governments.
Thank you.
And what will the advertising be?
It's gonna be for the development of any marketing materials that may come about in the next year.
Perfect.
Is that net RMA thing ever gonna happen?
We're just waiting on the railroad, Bob.
So you're saying no?
Isn't there a song about that? No. Okay.
Do you think that's actually, this might be a little bit of an aside, but is that actually moving, or you kind of think it's kind of dead in the water?
So I did hear some rumors of some movement a couple of months ago, with perhaps a private company wanting to acquire some rights to that, that would allow for both their use and the public uses that have been preliminary identified. This is more on the northern section, not so much on the
Yeah.
southern section. I'm talking about the part that's still considered active rail. I haven't heard what, if anything, came of that, but the hope was that if we could get movement on the northern portion, it may help push the southern portion to move a little faster. But again, it was all rumor and kind of speculation. There were some meetings happening kind of behind the scenes, but I haven't heard anything as a result of that. I want to say it may have gotten pushed to September.
Okay.
So if we can get movement on the northern end, I feel like that will help on the southern end of that rail, but
Yeah.
You know, the key component of any budget is the revenue, and, you know, you've forecasted a $300,000 flat amount. I realize that we're gonna have an increase, basically doubling, because an eighth to a quarter, but, just curious what the methodology was for coming up with 300,000.
let me. I'll have to go back and pull my work papers on that, Charles. Let me go back and I'll have to email that to y'all.
Okay.
Pull the reports we were using in the forecasts.
Yeah, cause I mean, I'm looking at the past revenue amounts, and, you know, even if I double it, that seems a bit high.
Yeah, there'd have to be some other growth going on.
Yeah. So.
It's been several months since I've looked at it, so I'm hesitant to just recall from memory.
I get it.
But I'll pull that and get back with y'all.
Okay. I mean, we can always manipulate expenses, but if we don't have the revenue right on the front side, you can't, it's hard to balance a budget. So just wanna make sure we're. What other questions y'all have? I mean, I realize it's a lot to absorb, but keep in mind the city's budget is, you know, significantly longer.
The employee retirement be TMRS or?
It will. So several EDCs set up their staffing differently. In some organizations, they are a direct employee of the Economic Development Corporation and may or may not be an employee of the city. I know my preference would be that they are an employee of the city, maintain their TMRS and report to the city manager and to the board. So, and there's some reasons for that. Some EDCs in cities are notorious for not always having the best working relationship with each other, and I think that helps make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction and are committed to working together. So that's kind of the thought behind that.
Do you think the role, I'm sorry about the Rico's.
I guess I agree completely. Wendell does a really good job of pulling together.
I guess,
No, not so much.
I guess my question on the budget side of it is, you know, breaking out the payroll in the way that it's reflected on here, with everything from insurance and whatever else, workers' comp and so forth, and it makes it look more like the payroll's coming from us, from a budgetary standpoint. Why am I wrong for thinking that?
Well, the EDC fund itself is covering the payroll and benefit costs.
I get that, but if an outsider comes in and looks at this budget, we know that, but somebody else comes in and says, well, you've got a payroll right here. So.
Makes us look more private.
I'm sorry?
It just makes us look more private.
Yeah.
So it's set up, my counter argument to that would be it's set up the same way. I mean, our Parks Department, their budget has their payroll coming out of it too. So every single department within the city looks the exact same as this sheet. So under police department budget, it has all of our police officers out of there as well. So maybe I'm not understanding the concern.
Well, it's the police department and fire department and parks department are city organizations. We are not.
Gotcha. So we could show that as a transfer out to the city for those payroll expenses and that you contract with us for that payroll?
I think that would probably be the cleaner way,
Okay.
in my opinion, based on what I know of government accounting practices, but I could be wrong. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I'm not trying to cause a hard time.
I've seen it done both ways,
But
so.
I just want to make sure we don't get in trouble down the road by reflecting something that we shouldn't. Is that making any sense to everybody else, or am I overthinking it?
So just want to be clear, right, the EDC board serves at the pleasure of the council.
Right.
You have funding that's decided by the voters, but you are still,
A department of the city.
yes.
Okay, if that's how we're viewed legally and.
We can make sure with our auditors and get an opinion
Yeah,
and
I
just
just-
verify, but.
I'm overly cautious, but, you
Yeah.
know, there's always watchdogs looking over stuff and
Yeah.
wanting to find shadows when there isn't any. So I'm just trying to cover our bases.
Sure. We will ask that question in the meeting.
I guess along a similar line, what I was wondering about is will this individual be full-time economic development counsel, or will there be other duties, city duties, or whatever this individual might be?
No, the goal is that they are full-time economic development.
And what would you see their initial focus being?
I think it's a combination of all those things that we've outlined in that work plan. So I think it's a mixture of business retention and expansion. I think it's new commercial attraction. I think it's marketing. I think it's all of those things.
Yeah, going out, trying to make contacts and market us.
Yeah, our existing business survey that we've talked about that we just don't have the capacity to get done right now. You know, Susan and I are kind of fitting things in where we can at the moment, but I think our efforts, I think we could easily spend 40 hours a week doing economic development if we just had the time. So.
Okay. Thanks. Sounds great.
And I think that was a promise to the voters too, when we did that sales tax swap election, was that we would have someone dedicated to do that, so.
And I think we are getting at a point where people are gonna wanna start seeing some sort of action and so forth. That'll help.
Yeah, a presence, yeah.
I agree with everything everybody just said. Okay, what else on the budget? I mean, because I'm good with it the way it is. Just like to have clarification on those couple of items.
Okay.
Yeah, so we need to make a motion to approve it or something like that?
We do. The motion would be to approve the 2024-2025 budget, depending on, with the ability to adjust the budget in the event that we've determined that payroll expenses should be allocated in a different manner. So that's the motion.
Can we back up for
Sure.
just a second? So, I pulled up our sales tax report, and I think you're right, I think we need to be closer to 250 on our
Okay.
sales tax revenue. So for 2023, if you'd had a 1/4%, the income would have been 269,000.
Okay.
So far in 2024, let's see. So far in 2024, it'd be 222,000. So with
You know,
2 months to go.
2 months to go and you're trailing a little
Right.
bit, so.
So I think 250,000 is probably a little bit more accurate.
Okay.
So to be clear, the surplus or deficit at the very bottom line, as you move to the far right of that, those forecasts already account for the dedicated personnel.
Yes.
Okay, so that's our actual operating capital, if you wanna call it that.
Yes.
Allocatable funds.
So that would reduce down from 161,000 to just over 111,000.
Yeah.
If we were to change that revenue amount.
Yeah, 111,590.51.
I think when I ran those sales tax estimates, it was before, we had a couple of months that kind of slowed down. May, June, and July were a little bit slower. I think when I ran those estimates in April, we were looking a lot better, and so it kind of slowed down these last few months on our sales tax growth, so. Thank you for catching that.
Actually, it was John, but I just rephrased his question. Okay,
I'll second your motion.
have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote, please.
Jerry Akins,
4.
Maria Davenport,
4.
John Chambers,
Or,
Brennan LaFleur,
4.
Charles Parker,
Yes.
and Bob Relo.
Yes.
Motion is approved for the approval of the 2024-2025 budget. Moving on to item agenda number 2, E2, discussion, consideration, and action on commercial real estate consultant.
Okay, at the last meeting, what we heard is that you guys wanted us to reach out and try to find a commercial real estate consultant to help us with searches for properties and things like that. So I did reach out as requested to Victor Vahi, chatted with him about a commercial real estate consultant. He had directed me to their website, which shows the investors that they have who are members of their the Tyler EDC. They had several real estate professionals there. At the last meeting, There was a couple of names mentioned. Mark Watley was one of those, and he works for Burns Commercial, and they are one of the ones who are members, excuse me, of the Tyler EDC. So I reached out with him after speaking with Mr. Vahi, and Leslie and I set up a meeting with him this week. We met with him on Monday. I feel like that meeting went really, really well. He is willing to help us in whatever capacity we would like for him to do. We had a good conversation. Leslie explained all of the things that are going on in town with 109 East Main, trying to redevelop this area more into our downtown area. I think it was a little bit of a surprise to him of how much of a population growth we've actually had. So he was very interested in that. We spoke with him about the types of things that when someone calls him looking for space, what they are needing or what they are looking for. So we made notes of that. They're mainly looking for water, sewer, electric, and gas. Obviously, those are all very important. They want it close enough to a major highway, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on a major highway. So for us, we need to be somewhat close to 110 and 346, as long as it isn't smaller roads than, say, maybe a county road. They probably would still be interested in seeing that. So that kind of opened up some different properties that we could possibly look at in the future.
And what was his name again?
Mark Watley. Sorry, trying to catch up with my notes here. He did ask us about, as more of a fleshed out scope of what we want him to do for us. So that was a discussion I thought we probably need to have here with everyone. He's happy to do whatever. He'll just kind of be a consultant and answer questions that we have, or we can contract with him to be actively looking for properties as well. Am I saying that correctly? Is that okay?
So would he, he's with Burns Commercial, would he garner properties from other commercial brokers as well, or just the ones that they have on their list?
I think he would work with other commercial real estate agents as well.
Awesome.
I don't think it would have to be just their list of properties. What Leslie and I talked about is possibly asking him for an analysis of the properties that are available or we have here, get his take on them, and get his opinion on what would be the best types of uses for those properties. What he sees from his experience that might be good.
Do you, and I'm gonna touch on the next agenda item with this question, because I gotta, so I'm wondering what the relationship would be if we had a real relationship with this commercial broker versus what we're gonna discuss in our next agenda item with retail recruitment consultant. So what would that relationship potentially look like should the city move forward with that? I realize I'm touching on another agenda item, but I have to combine them to understand that relationship.
The way I thought of working with Mr. Watley is more for light industrial type of, larger investors than retail. Retail is a larger investor. I'm not saying that correctly.
You're looking at more manufacturing, a different classification of
more
jobs.
primary
Yes.
jobs, working with Mr. Watley, and retail, the next would be strictly
Whether
retail.
it was an engineering firm, a accounting firm, somebody's gonna make shoes.
Right, some sort of light industrial.
Whatever,
yes.
those kinds of
Perfect.
situations as opposed to retail.
Retail.
Okay, just so we're
Yeah.
making the
Could one person do both? Or one firm do both? In other words, because I mean, it's not like we got so many different properties and situations that I'm just wondering whether we have a big enough target of opportunities to be splitting this into two separate jobs. I don't know.
I would think Watley
It
would
seemed
be,
like
he'd be able to handle just about anything you threw at him, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
But a retail recruiter person is going to look for the types of retail that would fit in our community rather than a property itself.
Right.
And I also think that having your own commercial retail broker, if you will, to partner with, that gives you a little bit of assurance that things are, even if that not necessarily retail is not what he's geared for, it does go back to land use overall, I would think, and looking at those properties. So I don't know that it's, I don't see it as a conflict. But,
Yeah, I'm not-
but
I don't think it's
I'm
they're
just trying to, I'm thinking
complementary.
out loud, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find the conflict like you are.
Yeah.
Do we know how much services for somebody like Mr. Watley would cost?
No, we do not yet, but we need a scope to be able to give to him so we can get some of that information back.
We kind of left that meeting at, we really need to define, next step would be to define that scope of what that looks like. And, you know, that depends on kind of the next agenda item as well. In my mind, I don't know that the two, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think it provides us kind of a really wide front on both retail, light industrial, light manufacturing, but it also gives us an advocate at the national level, one that's both local and one that's well-known for site selection and kind of covers all of those bases if you have both working together. So if somebody picks up the phone because they know they want to be in the East Texas area and they're calling a commercial real estate broker, then we've got somebody advocating on our behalf. If we have a national retailer that says, hey, we're looking for spots in the Southeast United States, you've got somebody working on your behalf as well.
The reason I asked that question is not to try to pin it down.
Yeah.
It's to make sure that if we make a commitment to both parties, that we still have additional funds available, so that if an opportunity presents itself, we still can be mobile. So I would hate to get locked into a lot of big picture and lose our ability to be tactical.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. I don't wanna overspend on
Get fixed costs.
fixed costs, and then all of a sudden we're scrambling to do anything demonstrative.
So what would the next steps, what would your priorities be, I guess, to determine that, to give you a comfort level? I have in my mind kind of what that would be, but.
I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I think we need to have this meeting with specialized public finance, see what our capacity looks like as it stands today, based on the revenue numbers that we anticipate with the increased sales tax allocation. And I think from there we can have kind of some better decision points going forward on what that may look like. Because if your priority is to be able to make demonstrative changes when a retailer comes in, you've got to know that first before you can do the other.
Yeah, because $100,000 doesn't go very far.
Right.
It sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not.
Yeah, no, not these days. Wasn't long ago, 100,000 was real money. I don't know anymore.
Now then they talk about $1 trillion there and $1 trillion there, and now you're talking about some more. Bad joke, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I like your suggestion, Leslie. I would like to have some of those answers back on the financing piece and move I'm not gonna say slowly, but cautiously.
It's just on the subject of what would we expect him to do for us? I mean, like if he, like you said, on a national level, if he got a request for a quote for the area, would he be able to write up a relocation, proposal, or would we be expected to do it?
I think we would. I don't know that we could craft an agreement with a commercial broker and expect them to do a relocation proposal for somebody else's properties.
I think that's probably outside the
I think
bounds.
that's asking too much.
Okay.
I think
So
someone
less
like
requirement.
Retail Coach could definitely help us do
Yes.
something like that. But I don't know that a commercial broker with their own
Okay.
listings, I don't know that I would even feel comfortable asking that of them, so.
I also saw in here you had this, retail market analysis for White House with the, Hibbs Institute.
That's gonna fall into the next,
Oh, that's in the next thing?
yeah, that's into the next thing.
Oh, okay.
So. I know we've crossed lines, but let's hold that one,
Okay.
hold that one back a little bit.
So to kind of sum up where we are on that one, so our meeting with Mr. Watley was incredibly productive. If nothing else, we got to tell our story about White House a little bit and make sure he kind of knows what's happening here and the great things that are going on. So let us kind of think on what that scope may look like, and kind of research some other economic development corporations and see if we can find anything similar that may help, and we can start working on kind of.
In my view, I'm looking at this more of a strategic partnership than actual contractual alliance.
Okay.
That's kind of the way I see it in my mind, but, again, scope of work, what we're asking, there's a lot of questions, so.
I do have one additional question that I think fits under this. Is, would this be the right person to potentially help us identify revenue generation opportunities for the EDC specifically? So,
Absolutely.
Yes, that was
I
the
think if
reason we
we-
asked for this.
okay.
When we are ready
That's-
to look at purchase, when we're evaluating whether or not we want to purchase a property, absolutely. I think he has the technical expertise and experience to guide us through those decisions, what types of businesses would be interested in looking at it. And I don't know that he will be able to get down into the nuts and bolts of revenue generation and what that looks like, potentially. I mean, lease revenue, purchase revenue, yes. So.
If he can offset his own cost, great.
Yeah.
So,
He's definitely gonna have a level of expertise there that we don't have.
Yeah, for those that, and I realize we hadn't met in a while, so just to kind of recap how we got here was, there are various land opportunities and different people that have reached out to us, for us to buy property, to develop things, move forward with it. And so, not having the time or expertise necessarily in-house to know how that would work, or whether that's a project that the city staff or this body should evaluate, we felt like it would be better to have outside expertise to be able to look into it, evaluate it, and give us some feedback as far as, okay, this would be a good opportunity. Because just because you think it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it is. Because what you see with your eyes and what Ernie or Bob sees with theirs, or Maria, that could be totally different thing than what the reality of the situation is, based on the location, based on the types of business you're going to be able to bring in, or whatever else. And so we need to be fairly strategic, in my view, of what we look at to purchase, because again, we don't have that much money, and we have to be very judicious with what we do have. And so that's the reason bringing in somebody on the outside, on the commercial development side, seemed like a better thing to do as a first step. But then figuring out that scope of work and what you want that for, ideally, in my mind, you know, there's some certain targeted properties that we've discussed and city staff has brought up over the last year or two. And we would like to look at those properties, probably at the top of the list, but we'd also like to find out other opportunities that might be there that we're not thinking of.
And he did bring up at least one that we hadn't even thought about that
Yeah.
would be good.
Yeah, and so, when you look at those kind of things and what, you know, what we could potentially capitalize on, and then mold that into the right type of development, that would tell you what kind of revenue you're gonna bring back, and be able to tell you whether or not your investment is gonna pay off in 5 years or 10 years, or you start looking at ROI and all those kind of things with it. So, anyway, that's, in my mind, what we were strategically trying to do. I probably should have led with this, but would have probably been a better setup for it, because it does get confusing. But anyway, that's where we were going, and I agree. I like the idea of let's figure out what that scope looks like. Get the tax people to look at our financing capabilities, and let's make a better determination to know what we're working with, and drill down on that as far as looking at those opportunities. I think that's the way forward in my mind. But if y'all see it different, then see, I went on another rant again. I can't help
But I
it.
think that gave us what we needed.
Yeah, that's a good summation.
We wanted to make sure we were on the right track, so.
Yeah. Okay. So if there are any other discussion, consideration, we're not gonna take any action at this time on the commercial real estate consultant. Nothing else? All right, then we're gonna move on to item 3, discussion, consideration, action on retail recruitment consultant. And as Ernie pointed out, we have some stuff from the Hibbs Institute, retail strategies, the retail coach, retail recruitment services. There's 4 or 5 different things that we're looking at here. I've read a couple of them in detail. I can confess, I haven't read every single word of all of these. But I'm gonna add a couple of things right off the bat. There were at least one of these proposals that when I read it, I rejected it immediately. But some of the others, I think, may have some more value to it. But having said that, the idea behind this motivation is finding a partner that can help us attract more retail into the city. And investment in a firm like this, because if I remember correctly, I believe there was a firm similar to this that helped us bring in the chicken place and Domino's, and helped move that old Burger King lot and some of that kind of thing. And they targeted that opportunity for us. And so thinking along those lines as far as retail, but it could be other kinds of retail as well. But thinking along those lines and looking at land use and opportunity, and being able to find a partner that can help us bring in and maybe have some contacts corporately, or they've done this kind of thing in the past. That's sort of the approach overall that I think we're looking at here. So we've got different proposals to consider with that. So anyway, I'm going to let Leslie take off and talk about, or Susan.
I'm gonna try to.
Susan, it's all on you.
It's all on me.
There you
Well, kind of to piggyback off of what Charles is saying, we had been looking at working with Hibbs Institute in the past. We've gone and spoken with them about what maybe kind of partnership we could have with them. And so they had recently, that was about a year or so ago we did that. And then just recently they reached out to Leslie and said, hey, we would like to present a proposal to you on the retail analysis. And that's what you see before you, is that proposal. Well, concurrently or simultaneously, we were also looking at possibly hiring or looking at a retail coach, for lack of a better word. I don't want to keep just using, I don't want to use their name, but someone who can help us market ourselves in, larger arenas. Leslie and I do not have the capability or the time to do that at the moment. And so that's when we reached out to Retail Coach and Retail Strategies. We asked them for proposals. That's what you see in front of you. They will do a retail analysis for us, but then they also do the marketing as well. They go to the marketing events and are looking, people come to them, different retailers come to them looking for spaces, and they would actively market for us and bring the proposals to us. So, I think the Hibbs Institute has a great proposal for the data, but what do we do with the data after we get it? And that is what Retail Coach or Retail Strategies would do for us. Help us with use of that data.
So the proposal that's called the Retail Coach,
Yes.
and it has, at the end of the proposal is indicating the total cost of some $32,000.
Yes.
What I wasn't sure, and I hear what you're saying, they certainly would do a lot more than Hibbs Institute in terms of taking the study and then perhaps actually marketing it and have connections that we wouldn't be privy to. Will they do the same sort of analysis up front that you would get from, say, like this Hibbs type of institute thing? So they would do that first, and that's included in the 32
Yes.
kind of deal?
And two of the data survey for Berkshire's and the data survey for Montez, they've already started doing that analysis for us without even being contracted with us.
Okay, so that's something they took on.
They just did.
Yeah.
That phase one on page 9 and 10 would cover that data analysis that you're asking about.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And I believe, which one is it that the city of Early?
Retail Coach.
Retail Coach.
Yeah, I mean, there was some romance to help and support the Souls College of Business and all that good stuff, but to pay nearly $20,000 and then you're not sure where to go with it versus getting that and then tying in with somebody that can help you run with it, I certainly see the wisdom in that.
That's when I said, when I rejected one of them almost immediately, so.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
not because they probably don't do very good work.
Yeah.
But it's the additional piece that's there with it that,
We need to get to the finish line.
yeah, I've got to get to the finish line with it. And then the other piece of this is, I don't know if you know where the city of Early is. It's a little town outside of Brownwood that for most of my life was a wide spot in the road and a place that provided a school system for those that didn't want to go to Brownwood or were never going to make the starting football lineup for Brownwood High School. And so that's really kind of got started. They have some lakefront, they have some different things there. So there are some similarities with White House versus Tyler versus Brownwood versus, we're probably a little bigger in size now than they are or close, but they partnered with the Retail Coach, and I understand they've had some phenomenal successes with it. Now, again, apples and oranges, West Texas, East Texas, a lot of differences there. But I do know a little bit about how Early has grown, some of the retail that they brought in, and some pretty great things that they've done. And I know that because I know people that are from there, live there, grew up there, whatever else, and maybe still have grandparents there, or so on and so forth. So from that testimonial point of view, led me leaning more toward the retail coach. I don't know the other the retail strategies as well, so I would like to maybe hear more about them, because one I've got reference on, the other one I don't.
So I will say, the city I used to work at began using retail strategies after I left. They've been happy with them for some services. They did not the economic development consulting, but the training piece of it, they use them for. In my mind, one of the things that I liked about the retail coach when we met with them, he was surprisingly familiar with White House already. But also, I think what they've been able to do in particularly suburban communities has been impressive. So when I looked at some of their portfolio and you look at some of the things that they've done, it has been quite a bit of focus on cities that are right outside in other metropolitan areas. So if you know anything about Harker Heights and the way that community has grown right next to Killeen and the things that they've been able to attract there, while being right next to a major city that you would think would automatically get the pick. So to me, that was particularly attractive about Retail Coach. I think either Retail Coach or Retail Strategies could do what we needed to do and do it well.
What's the cost difference between the two here?
So Retail Coach is $32,000 and it's a 1-year term. Retail Strategies was $45 per year with a 3-year term.
Okay.
I already like retail coach.
So they are a smaller firm than Retail Strategies, but in my mind, that's not necessarily a drawback either. So I definitely think they have their established relationships with retailers, large and small, that would be a good fit for our community. We did talk to them also about maybe attracting some things that are unique or would be unique to the East Texas area. We're not necessarily looking to cannibalize or copy what may be in Tyler or Glendale, but maybe some unique options here would fit.
What I like about it is, again, back on the pricing, not that I like spending this much money on anything, but yeah, it's $32,000 for the first year, but it's $25,000 a year ongoing for every year that you want to renew with this. Which my question is, this is on the original proposal. Can we lock that up longer and make a contract with them, sort of, or do we want this to be a year-to-year thing? Because prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
But if they're performing.
But if they're performing, then
Yeah, I don't like being locked in with a new organization where after 1 year we don't have a clear out.
there you go. I'm just asking questions.
No, I'm
It's
just.
my
I'm
job
just-
to throw out
whatever
this
flip
stuff.
I'm throwing out.
So you're saying would they negotiate down to a 1-year contract?
No, they've got a 1-year contract.
They propose this
Just
1
one.
year with the option to continue at 25 is
This-
retail.
Oh,
coach.
yeah,
There's
okay.
other ones, I read it, and again, it's not a contract, but
Yeah.
this comes across like you're committing to 3 years
For
at
3 years.
45,000 each year.
That's what I'm saying. Could you talk them down to, you don't have to commit to 3 years, but just a 1-year trial basis?
Could be.
I would like to have time to read all of these. I don't before I
Yeah.
really know.
Well, you know me, I'm ready to pull the trigger, but, but I certainly understand, before we commit to, ongoing money and different things, everybody needs to have a comfort level with all of this, that,
There's a lot of material.
there's a lot of material, it's a lot.
Our next meeting's pretty quick. It's like middle August.
August 15th?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that, it was so quick, yeah. The 15th is what we're thinking for the next meeting?
That would be the next scheduled meeting, yes, sir.
Notice none of these have a money back guarantee on them.
And then, so my meeting with our financial advisor is set for August 12th, so hopefully I'll have some information ready at that 15th meeting to talk about. And then keep in mind, I know we're not to that agenda item yet, but we have about $400,000 built up into your account as well. So just when we start talking about one-time capital purchases, I'm not advocating to use that for ongoing expenses, but that is something we will talk to our financial advisors about.
well, and again, I'm looking at this in the vein of, you know, we have $111,000 budget projected surplus for the year. And, you know, when you start thinking about doing contract for services and things like that, that's a budgetary item for an ongoing deal in my rudimentary accounting mind, and I'm not an accountant. So there you go. So yeah, I understand that, you know, what we've got over here in the balance, that's to me is totally separate funds from what we spend year to year, month to month, whatever, as far as that goes. But
Yeah, ongoing budget versus potential capital for projects.
right. And, you know, ideally you want to build that up, and then when you start talking about financing, if you were to purchase, you know, something out there, then you're talking about a capital outlay outside your budget to cover the debt service, potentially outside of whatever cash that you wanted to put into the project. It's just like buying a home. How much you going to put down and how much you're going to pay. It's the easiest way to explain it, I guess. But I do think, that a good partnership with one of these firms to help us identify and go out and bring in some different varied retail, you know, you look at it, granted it doesn't, you know, with only a 0.25% of the sales tax, the math's a little bit more challenging, but, you know, $1 million in retail and the city gets their percentage, and then, you know, we get our percentage off of that. Yeah, it doesn't take very many $1 million is, I guess is what I'm saying, before you start, you know, getting the dollar for dollar recovery off of that. So, and that's where you get into the ROI of return on investment, of what you spend is what you get. And so then it becomes, we don't have the expertise or the contacts to say on the phone, you know, and I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I found out that a certain firearms manufacturer was moving out of the state of New York due to their regulatory environment, I picked up the phone and called them. Of course, I was too late. The city of Breckenridge had already jumped in. And but being able to seize on those kinds of opportunities is probably outside of our scope, because we're relying on the news as opposed to somebody who may
Who's in the club.
Who's in the club. Exactly. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. Did you actually meet with people from retail, retail strategies?
We did. Well, we met virtually. But yes.
I mean, what
I have.
did you have a more positive feeling or whatever between the two, and based on your interview or discussions?
I think Mr. Farmer with the retail coach was more familiar with White House in particular. I mean, you could tell by speaking to him, he has driven through here and has seen our community in person. I've met with Miss Beasley a couple of times in person and virtually. Like I said, she's a professional. She would do an amazing job, but I did like the actual personal familiarity with our region that retail coach had. So,
Okay.
So you kind of lean toward them.
yes.
Good
I
to
think
know.
they talk about on their website, I think they have a little bit more familiarity with designing or recruiting specifically for downtown areas as well.
Yes.
And when we start talking about what's gonna be happening on East Main, we spent a lot of time talking about that, when we met with him, and I think, he may be able to bring kind of a different perspective specific to the vision that we have for downtown. And that was a little bit different than maybe retail strategies, and kind of understanding our focus may not just be 110, but it may also be East Main. And
Yeah.
understanding that's a different retailer than what would want to be on 110.
Again, I'm just gonna say it, I'm all in favor of moving forward with, the coach, but, I really want everybody to be
Yeah,
comfortable.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
reasonable to take a little time.
So, having said that, are there any other questions on this agenda item? Moving along to item number 4, consider future agenda items. Well, I think 2 and 3 probably gonna come back, right?
Decision point on certainly 3,
Yes.
maybe 2.
Anything else anybody wants to put up on the future agenda items?
So we'll also do maybe a borrowing capacity kind of presentation, depending on what information I get back from our bond counsel, or not bond counsel, financial advisors.
Yes. Okay.
I hope that this can be crafted by our wordsmith into a proper potential future agenda item, but I'll just kind of lay it out and hopefully you can help me out. So one of the things that I just generally don't like in looking at the budget and all this stuff is it seems like we're operating out of just the funds that are available through the taxpayer dollars. And it's my understanding that an EDC operates in a for-profit environment. So what I don't see in any of this is I don't see any additional revenue generation opportunities for the EDC, so that our budget is very, very dependent on percent of tax rate. And so I don't know if I would say the future agenda item is whether or not we could review potential revenue generation opportunities for the EDC.
I think that goes back to, and this is something we've been needing to circle back to, and I'm hesitant to put it on this next agenda again, but, you know, we were tasked to start with when we brought in Tom Mullins with 4 basic pillars that we needed to identify and go through. And I believe that particular avenue, exploration would fall under one of those committees. And, you know, I know that there's been discussion over the years. We've talked about a membership drive. We've talked about, you know, because that's how Tyler EDC
Tyler
is
gets huge
totally,
part of the revenue
that's,
from that.
every bit of their funding pretty much all comes from membership. And they don't really get any tax money whatsoever. So,
Really?
yeah. And I don't think most people realize
But
that.
Tyler, but they call it a membership.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
call it a
yeah.
membership.
They get a bigger membership from the city of Tyler than the other members.
They don't get any tax
There's no tax money that funds any of the Tyler EDC.
versus Lindale. Lindale's like White House. They get,
Right.
Yeah.
The city of Tyler opted to take their half-cent sale tax and put it into streets, and infrastructure. And so that's the reason when you drive around, you see the sign that said, you know, especially on Grande, this is paid for with the half-cent sales tax by the city of Tyler. So, but I think the business community would have a harder time buying into the city of White House's economic development, considering we are getting tax revenue. But there's a case to be made when you're only operating on maybe 0.25%, that you know, we could do that. And I'm really off topic and off agenda, and I apologize, but what I'm basically trying to say is that's something that whatever, and I can't remember which committee was which on that, but it really needs to come out of that committee in terms of a recommendation and the pillars. And that's something, again, we probably need to circle back on. But I think we've been hesitant to really kick those 4 pillars off until we had some other strategies in play, like a website, like the ability to have this additional, you know, the full 0.25% in our budget moving forward. The ability to put some other strategic things in place. So I think you're thinking right, but you know, whether or not you want to put it on as an agenda item to discuss that as a specific thing, or if you want to throw it back to committee, is your prerogative. I'll toss the ball back to you with that.
Well, I think one of the steps would be is, say we wanted to get a business partner. You'd create a business plan on how you buy it, how you market it, how you either sell it or lease it. Maybe we lease and we get that starts generating revenue so that we can either expand that park or make another one or something, yeah.
And I think that's where I'm really at, is like, so what I know is we've got a savings account, and yeah, it looks like we've got 400,000 or whatever, but I assume that the interest rate on that savings account is relatively low, and so we're essentially losing buying power with it just sitting there at the rate of inflation. So like, I don't run my own businesses like this. I don't leave a bunch of cash sitting there. I always put it where it's making money. Right. And so it just doesn't seem like a good use of taxpayer funds
and again,
to just leave sitting is all I'm at.
And again, and I think you're asking the right questions, because again, this is where, and again, bringing this back to future agenda items, trying to stay on.
That's
topic.
what it is. I just don't know how to.
Yes, but you know, as I mentioned before, we have had different property owners and so forth come and talk to us about buying the property. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the reasons we're looking at the, you know, commercial consultant, if you will, is to determine how we might buy that or obtain that, and if we did, how do we turn that into ongoing revenue to be able to do more for the city? So all of this is a building process within itself, but what you don't want to do, and what we can't do, is we can't just decide we all like a piece of property or we like a thing, and then that turns out to not be a revenue generator, or does it really enhance our community in some way?
Or we're getting into something too big that we don't have the money to make improvements to it.
Carry through.
Right.
Carry through and finish.
Yeah, because we're in the process of really only just laying the foundation, and that's got to be a good foundation before we go off in any particular direction.
Yeah.
In other words, we're trying to be, because we're trying to be very judicious, and yeah, we're not earning a lot of interest past book savings or whatever, because unlike, you know, your private funds, you could go put that in the stock market, and we can't necessarily do that. So we have to be a little bit more conservative with it. But I think all of these conversations that we've been having are basically geared toward growing revenue overall. And, you know, and I think one of the best ways to do that, if you had the money and you could go down and buy every blighted property that you think you see up and down 110, and we turn that all into lease money, and then we're able to buy more property off because we had the lease money, then you're directing the city, creating more revenue, doing everything that does it, and you control the rent. So you thereby be able to control what you want to be developed and what you want that to look like. So those are all avenues that I think would absolutely be in the best interest of the town, the community, the growth, providing more services, making it more appealing, attractiveness, giving you more money for your parks and the other amenities of life that you want, and creating an entire process for growth that's under control, managed, and looking
But
down
I
the road.
also think we should always have a nest egg
Yeah.
where we can move quickly on something if we need to.
Yeah,
Oh, I've missed it.
yeah, because, you know, if you can bend everything you got, and then the perfect opportunity comes along, and then you don't have any ability to seize it,
Yeah.
it's really hard to take advantage of that. So, I think for a future agenda, let's put on there general discussion on growth, growth development and ROI opportunities for the EDC.
Thank you.
Like that?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think I think everybody's vision, you know, I certainly know my vision's similar to yours. I just feel like we're in the building the foundation phase. We're getting this venture capital from the city to allow us to start, get this fledgling thing going, but we just don't really have the information yet to play it very intelligent.
I guess my only perspective is that at the front end of any business, at least in my perspective, is that typically you would take higher risk early in the business because you've got to generate some initial return and preferably a high return, which always comes with higher risk up front. And so I would say whatever we need to do to get that ball rolling, which is part of the you know, wins that you've talked about, is whatever that is, we need to commit, in my opinion.
The Tyler EDC, when it started in, what, 90? Its nest egg was, there was the Tyler Industrial Foundation gave all its land to it, so that Sam's, Earl Campbell, all that industrial area back behind Hollywood Theater and all,
Yeah.
they just gave all that land to the EDC, and that was their nest egg. So when they started selling the land, then now they had income, they could buy some more land. It got them rolling, you know, and now they do it all, well, with very little tax money.
Understood, thank you.
Yeah.
We just need one of those.
Yeah,
Somebody show
Easiest
up.
way to show up some
benefactor.
land.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on the future agenda?
Keep waiting, yeah. Doors open here.
Receive reports from staff. I think you've seen the budget. Is there anything else you'd like to point out, Leslie, Susan? Any questions on that?
What's the sales tax been doing? Is it flat or is it?
It's been actually a little down. July was back up over same month previous year, so that's good. First time that's happened in the last 3 months, so.
Good. I know Tyler's been crying.
Oh, there was a pretty good dip there, wasn't there?
We had to give some money back.
Yeah, we had a refund payment in March. And I need to go back and see what happened in, I know in May we had a refund payment, that's the one I'm thinking of.
That's good.
But July was back up a little bit, so. And this is total sales tax, this is not just the EDC's portion, keep that in mind. That's the full 1.5 cent allocation. So April and June, I would say were flat. May, we had a refund, which would have left it flat had we not had that refund, and then July was just up
Back.
slightly.
That's good.
But that being said, you know, we've had quite a few years of pretty spectacular sales tax growth, so.
16, 17, 17, that's,
I'll take that year over year.
yeah.
Hard to keep that up.
Yeah.
And I think we'll probably be flat or right at it this year, looks like it. Okay. What else? Going once, twice? Okay, we don't have anything in executive session, correct?
That is correct.
Then, the time is now 1:09, and we are adjourned. And I talked too much and made us go over, sorry.
Oh, no.
All right.